A modern life constantly demands our attention and attachment, yet the most profound transformations often happen in silence. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and peace is found not in having more, but in needing less. This is the quiet power of letting go. Stoicism offers a timeless framework for this inner revolution. By the end of this exploration, you will have a practical toolkit to release what holds you back and fundamentally reshape your life from the inside out. We will uncover how ancient practices can dissolve modern anxieties, and why some of the most fulfilled people embrace limits rather than chase endless desires. What does letting go truly feel like when you stop fighting the current of life? How much of your daily stress comes from trying to control the uncontrollable? The ancient teacher Epictetus, born a slave, offered a simple yet radical solution to this very human struggle. He called it the Dichotomy of Control, and it is the bedrock of Stoic peace. In his handbook, The Enchiridion, he writes, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. True power," he argues, "is not about commanding the world around you. It is about mastering your inner world. Your serenity is found by pouring all your energy into the first category, your own choices and judgments, and gracefully releasing your grip on the second. Think about the anxiety surrounding a job interview. You cannot control the other candidates, the hiring manager's mood, or the final decision. These all belong in the column of things not up to you. What is entirely within your command, however, is your preparation, your research, the thoughtfulness of your answers, and your conduct during the meeting. The Stoic focuses only on that second list, performing their part with excellence, and then accepts whatever outcome follows with equanimity. The stress dissolves because the battle is already won on the inside. Where in your own life are you exhausting yourself by trying to manage something that was never yours to manage? The Stoics believed that our greatest trials are not punishments, but training. This is the heart of Amor Fati, a love of one's fate. It is the radical practice of embracing everything life hands you, not with passive resignation, but with active, heartfelt approval. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, facing plague and war, wrote in his private meditations that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. He saw his own will as that fire, capable of transforming any obstacle into fuel for his purpose. Centuries later, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche would famously echo this ancient wisdom, declaring that his formula for human greatness was Amor Fati, to want nothing to be different, not in the future, not in the past, not for all eternity. This is not about pretending that hardship feels good. It is about shifting your perspective to see every event, especially the difficult ones, as essential material for your growth. You stop fighting the current of reality and begin to see how it is carving you into a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. Consider the story of a graphic designer who was made redundant from a stable corporate job he had held for over a decade. The initial shock felt like a profound failure, a personal rejection. But with no job to go to, he was forced to reassess. He began taking on small freelance projects he would have never considered before. One of those projects, designing a logo for a local nonprofit, unexpectedly went viral in its niche community. That single piece of work led to a flood of inquiries, allowing him to build a solo practice focused on causes he genuinely cared about. The forced redundancy, which he had initially dreaded, became the necessary push that aligned his career with his values. He did not just accept his fate, he came to love it for the new path it forged. Look back on a recent setback in your own life, a rejection, a plan that fell apart, an unexpected difficulty. What if you viewed it not as a barrier, but as the very training ground you needed? What new strength might it be trying to build in you? When was the last time you felt truly small under the vastness of the night sky? That humbling sensation is the essence of another powerful Stoic tool, the view from above. This is a mental exercise where you deliberately zoom out, imagining your life from a great height, seeing your city as a map, your country as a shape, and the earth itself as a pale blue dot in the infinite black. From this cosmic vantage point, the noisy drama of daily life shrinks to a manageable scale. Your urgent deadlines, that awkward conversation, the trivial inconvenience that ruined your morning, all of it recedes into insignificance against the backdrop of continents and centuries. This practice is not about dismissing your feelings, but about gaining the perspective needed to see what is genuinely worth your energy. Marcus Aurelius regularly engaged in this very meditation. He wrote in his private journal, "Remember that all is opinion, and that each man lives only in the present, this minute of his life. The rest is either past and gone, or is in an uncertain future." He would contemplate the countless individuals who had come before him, all with their own ambitions and heartbreaks, now long forgotten. He saw the vastness of time and space as an antidote to the poison of a swelled ego and petty concerns. To make this practical, try it with a current worry. Perhaps you are stressed about a critical email you need to send, or you are replaying a minor social embarrassment. Now pull back the camera in your mind. Imagine looking at this same problem from the perspective of 1 year from now. Will it even register as a memory? Now zoom out further. Picture someone a century from now walking through the very spot you are standing. They will have no knowledge of your anxiety, your project, or your reputation. Your worry from their viewpoint does not exist. This is not meant to make your life seem meaningless, but to liberate you. It reveals that the immense weight you are carrying is often an illusion of proximity. The next time a minor problem threatens to overwhelm you, take a mental flight up to the stratosphere. Look down and see your life as part of a much larger, beautiful, and ongoing story. What trivial concern will you choose to release back into the vast flow of time? The Stoics had a counterintuitive practice for building courage. They regularly imagined things going wrong. This was not a descent into gloom, but a disciplined exercise known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Its goal was to disarm fear by familiarizing the mind with life's inevitable setbacks before they ever arrived. The Roman philosopher Seneca was a master of this technique. In his letters, he advised his friend Lucilius to live each day as if it were the entirety of life, and to remind himself that all the comforts he enjoyed, his possessions, his reputation, even his loved ones, were merely on loan from fortune. He wrote that we should say to ourselves, "You have been given a body that is prone to illness, that is fragile. You have been given wealth that can be lost." He argued that by anticipating fortune's changes, we are never truly caught off guard. The ship captain who considers the possibility of a storm is not a pessimist, he is prepared. This mental rehearsal strips future hardships of their power to shock and paralyze us. It is the difference between a sudden, blinding flash of lightning in a dark room and the gentle, gradual sunrise. Both bring light, but one allows your eyes to adjust. Think of a difficult conversation you have been avoiding, perhaps with a colleague or a family member. The anxiety around it often grows from the unknown, from the fear of what might be said or how it might go wrong. Now apply the Premeditation of Evils. Sit quietly and walk through the scenario in your mind. Imagine the other person reacting with anger. Picture yourself listening calmly instead of reacting defensively. See the conversation ending without the resolution you hoped for. By mentally living through these potential outcomes, you accomplish two profound things. First, you realize that even the worst-case scenario is something you can endure. Your inner citadel remains standing. Second, you shift your focus from the uncontrollable outcome to the one thing you can always control, your own virtuous response. Your character becomes the point of the exercise, not a specific result. This practice also cultivates a deep, present moment gratitude. By consciously acknowledging that your health, your job, or your relationships are not permanent guarantees, you begin to appreciate them with a fresh intensity today, right now. You stop taking the mundane for granted. Choose one small fear or future event that is causing you low-grade anxiety today. It could be a work presentation, a travel delay, or a personal request you need to make. For just a few minutes, mentally walk through that event, not to feed the fear, but to witness yourself navigating it with composure and strength. What do you discover about your own resilience when you face the storm in the safety of your own mind first? We often confuse our initial, raw reaction to an event with the truth of the event itself. This automatic, often emotional, judgment is what the Stoics called an impression. It crashes into our minds like a wave, demanding an immediate response. But the core of Stoic resilience lies in that brief, critical space between the impression and your consent to it. You are not your first thought. You are the power that decides whether that thought is true. Your suffering is caused not by what happens, but by the story you instantly tell yourself about what happens. Epictetus, who understood profound personal loss and limitation, put it with stunning clarity. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." The event itself is neutral until your judgment paints it with meaning. A cancelled plan is just a change of schedule. It only becomes a personal rejection when you judge it that way. A critical comment is just a collection of words. It only becomes a devastating blow to your self-worth when you accept that judgment as fact. This is the practice of cognitive detachment, learning to observe your impressions without being swept away by them. Think of a time you received harsh feedback at work or in a personal relationship. The initial impression is often a hot flash of defensiveness, a voice in your head shouting that this is unfair, that you are being attacked. That is the wave. The Stoic move is to pause, to let the wave pass, and then to examine the feedback with calm curiosity. You separate the objective facts, the actual words that were said, from the emotional narrative you have attached to them. Perhaps the feedback was delivered poorly, but within it lies a single, useful piece of data you can use to improve. By detaching from the initial impression of attack, you reclaim the power to choose your response. You can extract the lesson without consuming the poison of resentment. Recall a recent moment when you had a strong emotional reaction, maybe a flash of anger in traffic or a pang of anxiety from a brief message. What was the underlying judgment you placed on that event? Did you decide you were being disrespected, that something bad was certainly about to happen? That pause, that moment of questioning your own automatic thoughts, is where your true freedom begins. What if having less could actually mean being more? This is the provocative heart of the Stoic embrace of voluntary simplicity. It is not about deprivation or a life of bare minimums, but about a conscious choice to find sufficiency within yourself rather than in an endless parade of external acquisitions. The Roman philosopher Seneca observed this with sharp clarity, writing that to be happy is to be self-sufficient, and that a man is wealthy not according to what he possesses, but according to what he can do without. He fiercely critiqued the luxuries of his time, arguing that they did not satisfy desire but only inflamed it further. He saw the simple life not as a punishment, but as a liberation from the constant anxiety of wanting, getting, and protecting. Your true needs are surprisingly few: food, shelter, purpose, and human connection. Everything beyond that is often a chase after wind, a pursuit of temporary relief from a hunger that can never be filled by things outside of you. True wealth, then, is not an overflowing account but a quiet mind that wants what it already possesses. There is a powerful story of a woman who worked in a high-pressure corporate role, her life defined by long hours and a substantial salary that funded a large home filled with possessions. The upkeep of it all, the cleaning, the organizing, the debt, became a second, silent job that drained her energy. Feeling overwhelmed, she made a radical decision to downsize, selling her house and most of her belongings to move into a modest apartment. The initial act felt like a loss, but what followed was a profound sense of relief. With fewer things to manage and a smaller financial burden, her mind felt clearer than it had in years. She discovered that the space she had craved was not in a bigger house but in a less cluttered mind. The freedom she gained was not from more money but from needing so much less of it. Her story echoes the Stoic truth that our burdens are often of our own making, tied to the weight of what we choose to carry. This week, look around your own living space. Identify one non-essential possession, perhaps an item of clothing you never wear or a decorative object that no longer holds meaning. What small act of release could you perform, not as a loss but as an experiment in lightness? How much of your present mental energy is spent reliving yesterday's conversations or decisions? That constant mental replay, that churning over what you should have said or done differently, is a heavy tax on your peace. Stoicism offers a profound and practical release from this burden by reminding us of a simple, unchangeable fact. The past is utterly and completely outside of our control. It is a stone that has already been set. To dwell on it is to hand over your only real possession, the present moment, to a ghost. Marcus Aurelius, shouldering the immense weight of an empire, constantly returned to this anchor of truth in his private writings. He asked himself, does what happened keep you from acting with justice, generosity, self-control, sanity, prudence, honesty, humility, and the other qualities that allow a person's nature to fulfill itself? Then remember this principle, for when something annoys you, the past is gone and the future is uncertain. All we are given is this fleeting, precious instant. Your life exists only here, only now. Every moment spent in regret over a finished chapter is a moment stolen from the one you are currently living. There is a story of a teacher who, years earlier, had made a significant error in judgment that cost her a job she loved. For a long time, she carried the shame of that failure like a weight in her pocket, touching it constantly, letting it color her perception of every new opportunity. She saw herself as the person who had failed, and this story kept her from applying for positions that truly excited her. The turning point came when she finally internalized the Stoic distinction between what she could and could not control. She could not undo her past mistake, that was fixed, but she could control the meaning she assigned to it in the present. She chose to reframe that failure not as a permanent stain on her character, but as a costly and invaluable lesson in humility and diligence. By forgiving herself and consciously releasing the old story, she freed up immense mental energy. That energy then fueled her pursuit of a new, more fulfilling role that she would have been too timid to approach before. Her past did not change, but her relationship to it transformed everything. To make this tangible in your own life, try a simple but powerful exercise. Take a piece of paper and write down one specific regret, one past mistake that still occupies space in your mind. Look at the words you have written. Acknowledge the lesson it holds if there is one. Then, gently crumple that paper or safely burn it. This is not an act of erasing history, but a physical commitment to stop letting that history dictate your present. As you release the paper, you make a conscious choice to reclaim the mental real estate that regret has occupied. What new possibility could you build on that liberated ground today? We often sacrifice the peace of today for the worries of tomorrow. You might be mentally living in a future that does not yet exist, rehearsing conversations that may never happen, or bracing for disasters that will likely never come. This mental time travel exacts a heavy toll, draining the vitality from the one moment you truly possess. The Stoics offered a powerful antidote to this habit, not by denying the future, but by re-anchoring our attention to the only place where life actually happens, the present. Wise planning is a practical tool, but chronic anxiety is a thief of your current peace. You cannot build a foundation on a day that has not yet arrived. All you can ever do, and all you are ever responsible for, is to act with virtue right now. The Roman philosopher Seneca captured this with piercing accuracy when he wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Your mind is spinning elaborate stories about potential failures and losses, and you are paying the emotional price for events that are merely phantoms. The real suffering is not in the future event itself, but in the present energy you expend fearing it. Consider the story of a man who worked for years in a large company, fixated on the goal of a specific promotion. His every action was calculated toward that future title, and his present satisfaction was perpetually deferred. He was constantly anxious, comparing himself to colleagues and interpreting every managerial decision as a sign of his future prospects. The stress was consuming him. Then, after a period of burnout, he made a subtle but profound shift. He stopped focusing on the promotion and redirected all his effort into mastering his current role. He focused on being exceptionally helpful to his team, on learning new skills for the sheer joy of it, and on finding small ways to bring integrity to each task. He began to find deep fulfillment in the daily work itself. Ironically, by releasing his white-knuckle grip on the future, he became a calmer, more capable, and more valued employee. The promotion, when it eventually came, felt like a natural outcome rather than a life-altering prize. His peace was no longer dependent on a future maybe. It was built on the solid ground of his present actions. Where in your own life are you trading the reality of this hour for a story about next month or next year? The next time you notice your mind drifting into that anxious future, gently guide it back. Feel the weight of your body in your chair. Notice the task directly in front of you. What single, small, virtuous action can you take in this very moment? Your future self will be built from a long chain of these present, purposeful choices, not from the worries you entertained along the way. The first step to inner freedom is learning to question your own thoughts. This is the core of the Stoic Discipline of Assent, a kind of mental gatekeeping that prevents you from being swept away by your initial, often flawed perceptions. Your mind is constantly bombarded with impressions, raw data from the world, but you are under no obligation to automatically agree with them. You can choose to withhold your consent, to examine the thought before you let it shape your reality. Epictetus was adamant about this practice, teaching his students that we should not give assent to every impression that comes our way, but instead pause and say, "Wait, let me see who you are and what you represent." This small gap between stimulus and response is where your power truly lies. Consider the sudden, hot feeling of being insulted. The immediate impression is one of attack, of disrespect, a story that demands an angry or defensive reaction. This is the automatic judgment crashing into your mind. but the practice of assent asks you to pause for just 5 seconds and question that initial story. Is this person's comment truly an insult, or is it merely my interpretation? Could they be having a terrible day? Is there a piece of difficult truth hidden in their harsh delivery that I could use if I were not so busy feeling offended? By withholding your immediate agreement, you transform the event. It shifts from a personal attack you must defend against into a neutral piece of information you can evaluate with calm curiosity. You stop being a puppet jerked by the strings of every passing impression and become the one who holds the strings. This simple pause is a superpower in a world designed for instant reaction. Today, choose one moment when a negative thought arises, a flash of jealousy, a spike of anxiety, a wave of frustration. Before you let that feeling dictate your next action or word, grant yourself the gift of a 5-second pause. In that brief silence, ask yourself, is this impression a fact, or is it just a story I am telling myself? The clarity you find in that space can change the entire course of your day. Seeking constant approval from others is a form of self-imposed slavery. You hand over the keys to your own happiness, making your inner state entirely dependent on the changing winds of external opinion. The Stoics argued that this is the most common and debilitating form of servitude, one we often willingly enter. Your worth is not something to be voted on by a committee of strangers, colleagues, or even loved ones. It is a quiet conviction built on your own actions and character. When your sense of self is rooted in your internal integrity, you are unshakable. Praise cannot inflate you, and criticism cannot deflate you, because your core is built on something no one else can touch. Marcus Aurelius, a man whose every decision was scrutinized by millions, wrote a powerful reminder to himself in his private journal. Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others, he wrote, when you're not thinking with reference to some aspect of the common good. For you are losing the opportunity for other work when you have such thoughts as what is so and so doing, and what are his motives, and what is he saying, and what is he thinking. He saw this obsession with others' perceptions as a thief of time and mental energy, a distraction from the only real work, the work on his own virtue. There is a story of a painter who spent years creating work she thought would impress galleries and critics. Her art was technically proficient, but it felt hollow, devoid of the raw, personal themes that truly moved her. She was constantly anxious, checking for positive reviews and feeling crushed by any negative feedback. Her entire creative life was a performance for an invisible audience. Exhausted, she finally decided to stop. She put away the large, ambitious canvases and began creating small, intimate pieces just for herself, exploring memories and emotions she had long suppressed. She was not thinking about selling them or exhibiting them. To her astonishment, this private, unburdened work was the most powerful she had ever produced. It was only when she let go of the need for approval that she discovered her authentic artistic voice. And ironically, that authentic voice was what eventually drew people to her work in a way her calculated pieces never had. Her inner integrity became her most magnetic quality. Where in your own life are you performing for an audience? Is it in your career where you shape your ideas to be more palatable? Is it in your social life where you filter your true personality to fit in? Identify one small area this week where you can consciously release that performance. Speak your mind with kindness where what you genuinely like, or pursue a project that interests you, regardless of its perceived value to others. What small act of internal integrity can you commit to, simply for the freedom of no longer needing an applause that may never come? What if you could intensify your appreciation for your loved ones by imagining life without them? This is the heart of the Stoic practice of negative visualization, a powerful gratitude hack that works in reverse. It is not a morbid fixation on loss, but a deliberate exercise in valuing what you have by temporarily holding its absence in your mind. The Roman philosopher Seneca explicitly advised this in his letters, urging his friend Lucilius to periodically remind himself to love his dear ones as though they might one day be lost. He was not promoting a life of fear, but a life of profound, present-moment appreciation. By consciously contemplating the temporary nature of all things, you strip away the fog of habit and see your blessings with fresh, astonished eyes. You stop taking the people and comforts of your life for granted because you have already, in the safety of your own mind, rehearsed their farewell. This practice does not create sadness, it inoculates you against the carelessness that so often accompanies routine. Think of your home, the simple comfort of a roof over your head and a warm bed. Now close your eyes for a moment and mentally walk through a day without it. Picture yourself without that shelter, facing the elements, searching for a safe place to rest. When you open your eyes, the familiar walls around you will feel less like a given and more like a gift. The same applies to your health. Imagine waking up tomorrow without the full use of your body, the simple ability to walk across a room or see a sunrise now becoming a monumental challenge. Suddenly, the health you possess today is not an invisible default, but a vibrant, active miracle. This mental exercise transforms your relationship with the present. The sound of a loved one's laughter is no longer just background noise, but a precious melody you have chosen to fully hear. The comfort of your daily routine becomes a sanctuary you actively appreciate. The goal is to make your gratitude so vivid and immediate that it crowds out the space for petty complaints and anxious wants. Try a simple daily ritual. Each morning, as you sip your coffee or prepare for the day, take just 1 minute. Choose one thing you are grateful for: your sight, your partner, your job, the tree outside your window. Now, before you feel the gratitude, first imagine its absence. See the world without that color. Feel the silence where their voice should be. Picture the emptiness of a day without purpose. Then release the thought and return to the reality where that blessing is still yours. The wave of appreciation that follows will be deeper and more authentic than any routine thank you. It is a daily reminder that everything is on loan, and that awareness makes the temporary possession of it all the more sweet. What ordinary part of your life today could you see as extraordinary if you only dared to imagine its loss? Holding onto resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. You are the one who is slowly consumed by the bitterness, while the object of your anger may be entirely unaware or unaffected. The Stoics approach this deep human wound with a radical and liberating logic. They argued that the actions of others, especially the harmful ones, are firmly in the category of things not up to us. You cannot control what someone else has done or said, but you have absolute sovereignty over your judgment of that event and your subsequent response. Forgiveness, in this framework, is not a weak pardon extended to someone who wronged you. It is a strategic and powerful gift you give to yourself, a conscious decision to stop letting a past event continue to inflict pain upon your present. Marcus Aurelius offered a profound key to unlocking this freedom. He wrote in his Meditations that when someone wrongs you, immediately consider what notion of good or evil they were acting from. For when you see that, you will feel compassion rather than surprise or anger. He saw those who cause harm not as monsters, but as misguided souls, ignorant of what is truly good. They are chasing a distorted version of the good, like a person who mistakes a shiny piece of glass for a diamond. Their action comes from a place of error, not from a place of superior power over you. Your anger, then, is a protest against their ignorance, a futile struggle against a fact you cannot change. There is a compelling story of a man who carried a grudge against a former business partner for nearly a decade. This partner had made a decision that cost him financially and felt like a profound personal betrayal. For years, the man replayed the event in his mind, his anger a constant, low hum in the background of his life. It colored his new business relationships with suspicion and prevented him from taking certain risks. The grudge was a heavy chain he dragged with him everywhere. The shift happened when he encountered this Stoic perspective. He realized his former partner likely acted not from a pure desire to harm him, but from a place of fear, short-sightedness, or a flawed understanding of success. This did not excuse the action, but it reframed it from a personal attack into a human error. He made the conscious choice to forgive, not because his partner deserved it, but because he himself deserved to be free. The relief was immediate and physical, a literal weight lifted from his shoulders. He had finally stopped drinking the poison. His energy was no longer siphoned into maintaining the grudge, and that liberated vitality flowed into building new, more trusting partnerships. His peace was no longer held hostage by someone else's past decision. Is there one person in your own life, from the distant past or recent history, whom you need to forgive? This is not for their sake, for they may never know or even care. This is for your own inner freedom. Identify that person and the old story of hurt you carry. Then, just for a moment, consider the possibility that they acted from a place of ignorance, not malice. What heavy chain might you choose to lay down, not because what happened was okay, but because your future peace is worth more than your past pain? The past is a memory, the future a possibility, only the present is real. This is not a poetic sentiment, but a foundational truth of Stoic physics. Life is not a continuous line stretching behind and ahead of you. It is a series of discrete, fleeting moments. And it is only within this single, ever-unfolding moment that you are truly alive and able to act. Anxiety is a fear of a future that does not exist, and regret is a prisoner's chains forged from a past that is already gone. When you fully inhabit the present, you step out of these imaginary cages and into the only domain where your power is actual. Your capacity for courage, for kindness, for focus, for virtue, is not a resource you can borrow from yesterday or save for tomorrow. It is only available to you right now. Epictetus, with his unflinching practicality, instructed his students to remember that 2 words should be ready for use at all times. The first, for the things not in our control, is to simply say, "You are nothing in relation to me." And the second, for the present moment and our duty within it, is to say, "I was looking for you." He taught that we must meet the present task with our full attention, as if it were the very person we had been searching for. This is where life happens, in the meeting. Marcus Aurelius, too, constantly pulled his own focus back from the grand plans of an empire to the small, immediate duty before him. He wrote, "Do not let the future trouble you, for you will come to it, if come you must, with the same reason you now apply to the present." The same mind you use to navigate this minute is the mind you will have to navigate the next. There is no other tool and no other time. Consider the story of a woman overwhelmed by a looming project deadline and a personal conflict with a friend. Her mind was a whirlwind of what-ifs and if-onlys, a state of constant, draining tension. One afternoon, the mental noise became so loud she simply had to step outside. She decided to go for a walk with a single rule. She would not let her thoughts wander from the sensory details of the experience. She felt the exact pressure of her foot meeting the pavement with each step. She noticed the complex pattern of bark on a tree she passed every day. She listened to the distinct pitch of a specific bird call, separate from the general hum of the city. For those 20 minutes, she was not a person with problems. She was a collection of senses fully immersed in the reality of a walk. and when she returned to her desk, the problems had not vanished, but her relationship to them had fundamentally shifted. The anxious future and the regretful past had lost their grip because she had just proven with her entire being that the present moment was a spacious and manageable place to live. The weight was gone because she had stopped trying to carry all of time at once. You can try this re-anchoring for yourself, right where you are. For just the next minute, press pause on the internal narrative. Notice 5 distinct things you can see in your immediate environment, not just the wall, but the specific way the light falls across its surface. Listen for 5 distinct sounds near and far. Feel 5 distinct physical sensations, the texture of your clothing, the temperature of the air on your skin. For this 1 minute, there is no past to regret and no future to fear. There is only this rich, detailed, and utterly real present. What do you discover when you stop telling the story of your life for just 60 seconds and simply live inside it? What stories about yourself are you clinging to that might be holding you back? We all carry these internal narratives, a collection of labels and roles we believe define us. I am the successful one, the reliable friend, the person who always gets things right. Or perhaps the opposite, I am the one who always struggles, the imposter, the person who never quite fits in. These stories feel like truth, but Stoicism invites us to see them for what they really are, temporary costumes we wear, not the core of who we are. Deep within, beneath the shifting tides of reputation and achievement, lies what the Stoics called your inner citadel. This is your essential self, a place of unshakable reason and character that remains constant even when your external world, or the stories you tell about it, completely falls apart. It is the part of you that observes the drama without being the drama. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this idea to ground himself amidst the immense pressures of his rule. He wrote, "You are a little soul carrying a corpse," as Epictetus used to say. This stark image was not meant to be morbid, but to separate his essential being, his directing mind, from the temporary vessel of his body and the fleeting titles attached to it. He practiced seeing himself not just as the emperor of Rome, but as a citizen of the world, a small part of a vast, interconnected whole. This cosmic perspective shrinks the ego's grand narratives to a manageable size. When you identify as a citizen of the world, your personal story of being the successful executive or the failed artist becomes less of a life-defining epic and more of a single chapter in a much larger, more beautiful book. You are not your job title, you are not your relationship status, you are not the sum of your past mistakes or your future ambitions. You are the conscious awareness that holds all of these things, and that awareness itself is what remains free. Consider the story of a man who had built his entire identity around being a high-level executive. For 20 years, his sense of worth was tied to his corner office, his authority, and the respect his title commanded. When a company merger eliminated his position, he did not just lose a job, he felt his entire self-concept shatter. He was adrift, depressed, and felt invisible without the label he had worn for so long. The turning point came when he began reading Stoic philosophy and encountered this concept of the inner citadel. He started a simple practice. Each morning he would sit quietly and repeat to himself, "I am not my title. I am not my career. I am my character, my integrity, my capacity to learn." He began volunteering, not in a field related to his old work, but in a community garden, getting his hands dirty and learning a completely new skill from people who had no idea he used to be an executive. In that humble environment, stripped of his old story, he discovered a different version of himself, one that was more patient, more curious, and far less anxious. He found that his true worth was not something a corporation could ever give or take away. It had been inside him all along, waiting behind the story he had been telling. This week, try a simple but powerful exercise. Take a moment of quiet and write down 3 labels you consistently use to define yourself. They might be positive, like intelligent or hardworking, or they might be limiting, like awkward or not a leader. Look at these words you have written. Now ask yourself a single, profound question. Does this story serve my growth, or does it limit my possibilities? Does the label intelligent make you afraid to ask a beginner's question? Does the story of being reliable prevent you from ever saying no and setting a healthy boundary? You do not need to discard these labels entirely, but you can learn to hold them more lightly, to see them as descriptions of past behavior, not fixed definitions of your soul. What new action could you take? What new part of yourself could you explore if you were willing to set one of these old stories down, even just for a day? Your mind is a deep lake, undisturbed by the winds and waves on the surface. This is the Stoic vision of equanimity, a state of profound inner stability that remains unshaken by the chaos of external events. It is not a cold, emotional shutdown or a detached numbness. True equanimity is a resilient strength, a calm center from which you can assess any situation with clarity and choose your response with purpose, rather than being hijacked by a storm of reaction. The Roman philosopher Seneca described the wise person as one who is unshaken by fortune's slings and arrows, possessing a soul that looks down from a higher place, laughing at both the hopes and the fears that arise from mere chance. This laughter is not one of mockery, but of liberation, the sound of a soul that knows its peace cannot be threatened by anything outside itself. Think of a leader navigating a severe company crisis, perhaps a sudden financial shortfall or a critical product failure. Panic is contagious, and it spreads quickly through a team, clouding judgment and fueling rash decisions. The leader who has cultivated equanimity does not pretend the problem does not exist. They see the full severity of the situation with absolute clarity, but their inner lake remains calm. Because they are not drowning in fear, they can think strategically, communicate honestly with their team, and make deliberate, courageous choices. Their calm is not a lack of care, it is a powerful resource. It becomes an anchor for everyone else, inspiring confidence and focus where there was only chaos. This stable presence allows the entire team to channel their energy into solving the problem, rather than being consumed by the drama of it. The next time you feel that familiar surge of anger, anxiety, or frustration, that is your moment to practice. Before a single word leaves your mouth or an action is taken, grant yourself the gift of a single, conscious breath. In that brief pause, you create a space between the trigger and your response. You step back from the choppy surface waves and reconnect with the deep, still water within. In that quiet space, you reclaim your power to choose. What might you see clearly, and what right action might you take from that place of calm? Everything you have and everyone you love is on loan from the universe. This is one of the most sobering and ultimately liberating truths that Stoicism offers. We speak of ownership of my house, my career, my partner, but this is a comforting illusion. In reality, we are merely temporary custodians, granted the privilege of stewardship over people, possessions, and even our own physical bodies for a brief and uncertain span of time. This perspective is not meant to breed a nihilistic despair, but to foster a profound and active appreciation for the precious, fleeting moments we are given. Marcus Aurelius, lying in his military tent, would constantly remind himself of this. He wrote, "Keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come." Existence flows past us like a river. The infinite behind us is closed, and the abyss of the future is boundless. In this endless flow, to speak of permanent possession is to speak of capturing a river in your hands. The water will always slip through your fingers. There is a poignant story of a woman who inherited a beautiful, antique vase from her grandmother. It was not just an object to her, it was a vessel of memory, a tangible link to a person she deeply loved. She kept it in a place of honor in her living room, dusting it carefully, always aware of its fragility. One day, during a routine cleaning, her elbow accidentally brushed against it. The vase teetered for a heart-stopping second before crashing to the floor, shattering into 100 irreparable pieces. Her initial reaction was a wave of devastation and self-recrimination. She had not just broken a vase, she felt she had broken a connection. For weeks, the sight of the empty space on the shelf brought a pang of loss. But then she remembered the Stoic practice of releasing the illusion of possession. Her grandmother was not in the vase. The love they shared was not stored in the clay. The vase was merely a temporary, beautiful object that had served its purpose and was now gone. The memories, the lessons, the warmth of that relationship, those were hers to keep forever. They existed in her mind and heart, not on a shelf. By letting go of the object, she found she could hold the memory more purely, without the anxiety of potentially losing its physical symbol. Her peace was no longer contingent on preserving a fragile thing. Look around you now at a valued possession, something you cherish. It could be a piece of jewelry, a book, a photograph, or the device you are using right now. Notice how you hold it in your mind. Is it with a clenched fist, a grip of fear that it might be lost or broken? Or can you practice holding it with an open hand, appreciating its presence deeply while simultaneously acknowledging its temporary nature? This open hand does not love the object any less. In fact, it loves it more authentically, without the shadow of future loss darkening the present joy. What cherished thing can you look upon today, not as an owner, but as a grateful and temporary guardian? The Stoics believed in voluntarily making life a little harder to make themselves stronger. They called this practice voluntary discomfort, a deliberate training of the spirit to build resilience and prove a profound point. True happiness, they argued, does not reside in the soft bed or the warm meal, but in the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you can thrive without them. This is not about punishing yourself, but about fortifying your inner citadel against the inevitable storms of life. The Roman senator Cato the Younger, known for his iron will, deliberately wore simple, outdated clothing in an era of opulence. He walked barefoot through Rome's streets in all weather and often chose the most basic food, not because he had to, but to demonstrate that his dignity and peace were independent of such comforts. The philosopher Musonius Rufus taught that practicing hardship was essential for building courage, stating that one must accustom themselves to be able to eat only what is at hand, to wear whatever clothing is available, to sleep on a hard bed, and to endure heat and cold. He saw this as the training that separates the free person from the slave to their own desires. The goal is to move from a state of fear, where you are constantly anxious about losing your comforts, to a state of power where you know you can handle their loss with grace. This practice builds a deep, quiet confidence that permeates everything you do. When you know you can endure a cold shower, a missed meal, or a long walk, the small irritations of daily life lose their power to disturb you. You carry with you the unspoken knowledge that you are tougher than your circumstances. You can try this for yourself in small, manageable ways. This week, choose one small comfort to voluntarily forego. Perhaps you take a cold shower for 1 minute at the end of your usual routine, or you skip a single meal not for dieting, but to sit with the sensation of hunger and observe that it passes. You could choose to walk to an errand you would normally drive to, feeling the weather on your skin. The point is not the act itself, but the inner conversation that follows. When the impulse for comfort arises, you pause and consciously choose the harder path. In that moment of choice, you are not being deprived, you are building your strength. You are gathering direct, personal evidence that your well-being is not held hostage by external conditions. What small comfort will you set aside to discover the reservoir of fortitude that lies just beneath the surface of your daily routine? We are addicted to certainty, yet life is fundamentally uncertain. We crave guarantees about our health, our careers, and our relationships, a fixed map for a journey that is constantly being redrawn by forces beyond our control. This craving, this insistence on knowing exactly how things will turn out, is a primary source of our anxiety. We exhaust ourselves trying to force the river of life into a straight, predictable channel, fighting against its natural, meandering flow. Stoicism offers a radical alternative, not by giving us false promises of security, but by teaching us to find our freedom in the embrace of the unknown itself. The philosopher Epictetus, who understood profound personal limitation, cut to the heart of the matter with unflinching clarity. He stated that happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle, that some things are within our control and some are not. He taught that we must not seek to have events happen as we wish, but wish for them to happen as they do happen. This is not a call for passive resignation, but for an active, intelligent cooperation with reality. It is about trusting in your own capacity to adapt, to respond, and to find your footing even when the ground beneath you is shifting. Consider the story of an entrepreneur who spent years developing a new software platform. She had a detailed 5-year business plan, exhaustive market research, and a rigid timeline for every milestone. She was chasing the illusion of certainty, trying to eliminate every possible risk before she launched. This pursuit was paralyzing. Every new piece of data created more doubt, and she constantly delayed her launch to account for one more variable. The stress was immense. Finally, after a period of burnout, she made a pivotal shift. She accepted that she could never predict the market's response with absolute certainty. Instead of waiting for a perfect, risk-free moment that would never come, she decided to trust in her ability to adapt. She launched a simple, minimal version of her product to a small group of users. It was far from perfect, and she had no guarantee of success. But by releasing her need for a guaranteed outcome, she freed herself to act. She began to listen to her users and adapt the product based on their real feedback, something her rigid plan had never allowed. The business did not succeed in the way she had originally envisioned. It evolved into something more responsive and ultimately more successful. Her breakthrough came not from predicting the future, but from courageously stepping into its uncertainty. What one decision are you currently postponing because you are waiting for a guarantee? Is it a career change, a difficult conversation, or a creative project? Identify that single, stalled choice. Now, instead of demanding a perfect, risk-free path forward, ask yourself what one small, manageable step you could take today without any certainty of the outcome. That single step taken with courage is worth more than 1,000 perfect plans. It is the moment you stop being a prisoner of the unknown and become an explorer of your own life. The Stoics saw the universe not as a collection of separate events, but as a single, living organism. Every person, every event, and every falling leaf is a vital part of a vast, rational, and interconnected whole. They called this profound concept sympatheia, the understanding that we are all threads in one intricate fabric, and that nothing happens in true isolation. This worldview transforms our perception of hardship from a random, personal attack into a necessary note in a grand, cosmic symphony. It is the ultimate antidote to the loneliness of modern life, replacing the illusion of separation with a deep, abiding sense of belonging. Marcus Aurelius, gazing at the stars from his military camp, constantly returned to this truth to fortify his spirit. he wrote in his meditations, "All things are intertwined with one another. A sacred bond unites them, and there is scarcely one thing that is isolated from another. For all things are coordinated and combined to form the same universe." He saw his own struggles with betrayal, plague, and war not as meaningless suffering, but as his particular, necessary role in the health of the whole. His duty was to play that part with courage and integrity, trusting that his personal challenge served a purpose far greater than his individual comfort. This perspective does not make the pain vanish, but it infuses it with meaning, allowing us to release the bitter narrative that we are being unfairly singled out by an indifferent cosmos. Consider the story of a man who suffered a serious athletic injury that ended his promising career in sports. For a long time, he saw the injury as a catastrophic, random event that shattered his identity and his future. He felt utterly alone in his loss. During his long and painful rehabilitation, however, he was forced to slow down and spend countless hours in physical therapy clinics. There, he connected with other patients who were struggling, and he discovered a natural talent for coaching and encouraging them through their own difficult recoveries. His intimate understanding of their pain and frustration gave him a unique ability to offer hope. This led him to eventually train as a physical therapist himself. The injury that had seemed like an ending was, in fact, the very thing that redirected his life toward a deeper purpose of service. His personal misfortune became the thread that connected him to a community of healing, allowing him to contribute in a way he could never have imagined from his former, isolated peak. His hardship was not an error in the universe, it was a redirection. Look back on a recent challenge in your own life, a disappointment or a setback that felt purely negative. Can you trace the threads that have emerged from it? Perhaps a failure taught you a humility that improved your relationships. Maybe a loss opened up space for a new opportunity you would have been too busy to notice. How might this difficulty be secretly connected to a larger pattern of growth, or perhaps even preparing you to serve someone else in a way only you can? Perfectionism is the enemy of action and the thief of peace. It is that quiet, critical voice that insists if you cannot do something flawlessly, you should not do it at all. This relentless demand for an impossible standard creates a state of paralysis, where starting a project, a conversation, or a new habit feels too risky because the shadow of potential failure looms so large. The Stoic path offers a profound correction to this. Their entire philosophy was built not around achieving a state of perfect, error-free existence, but around the daily, humble practice of making progress. The Stoic sage was an ideal, a North Star to guide their journey, not a brutal measuring stick to punish themselves with. The goal was excellence in character, not perfection in performance. Seneca, in his letters, offered gentle wisdom on this very human struggle. He wrote that we should be content if we have done our best, even if we have accomplished very little. He was not advocating for mediocrity, but for a sane and sustainable approach to growth. He understood that the person who tries their honest best and falls short has acted with more virtue than the person who never tries at all, frozen by the fear of not being the best. Consider the story of a writer who dreamed of completing a novel for years. She had the entire plot mapped out in her mind. The characters felt vivid and real, but the blank page was a wall of terror. Every sentence she wrote felt inadequate compared to the masterpiece she envisioned. She would write a paragraph, delete it, and then avoid her desk for weeks, the pressure to be perfect stifling all creative impulse. The project was going nowhere. Her breakthrough came only when she consciously adopted the Stoic mindset. She decided that her goal was not to write a perfect first draft, but to write an imperfect one, to simply put words on the page with consistency. She gave herself permission for it to be messy, for the dialogue to be clumsy, for the descriptions to be unpolished. The moment she released the demand for flawlessness, the dam broke. The words began to flow, not because she had suddenly become a perfect writer, but because she had finally embraced the process of being a progressing one. She finished her manuscript, and only then, with a complete, however flawed, draft in hand, could she begin the true work of refining and editing. The finished book existed not in spite of the imperfect first attempt, but because of it. Where in your own life is the demand for perfection holding you hostage? Is there an email you have been agonizing over for days, a creative project you are too intimidated to begin, or a fitness goal you have not started because you cannot commit to a perfect regimen? Identify that one avoided task. Now make a different choice. Commit to doing it not perfectly, but merely good enough for today. Send that email with a few rough sentences. Write just one paragraph of that report. Take a 10-minute walk instead of the full-hour workout you feel you should do. This small act of completion, however imperfect, is a direct strike against the tyranny of perfectionism. It is a vote for action over anxiety, for progress over paralysis. What single imperfect action will you take to reclaim your momentum and your peace? When was the last time you sat in complete silence, with only your own thoughts for company? Modern life conspires against this very idea, filling every spare moment with notifications, podcasts, and endless streams of content. Yet the Stoics saw voluntary silence not as a punishment, but as a profound source of power. This practice of solitude is the fertile ground where self-examination takes root, allowing you to untangle your judgments from the noise of the world and reconnect with your deepest principles. It is in the quiet that you can finally hear the whisper of your own inner citadel. Seneca, in his moral letters, celebrated this practice with striking clarity. He wrote that we must retreat into ourselves as much as possible, for a person who is never alone is always in the company of the crowd, and therefore with trouble. He was not advocating for a hermit's life, but for a daily appointment with oneself, a sacred space to converse with your own mind, to question your impulses, and to realign your actions with your virtues. This is not loneliness, which is a sense of lack, but solitude, which is a state of fullness where you are sufficient unto yourself. To make this tangible, begin with a daily Stoic pause. This is not a complicated meditation, but a simple commitment to 5 minutes of quiet reflection. Find a chair or a quiet corner and just sit. No phone, no book, no distractions. Your mind will rebel at first, offering up a shopping list of worries and to DOS. Simply observe these thoughts as passing clouds without judgment, and gently return your focus to your breath or the simple fact of being present. In this space, you are not doing, you are being. You are practicing the art of needing nothing external to feel at peace. This week, I challenge you to schedule 15 minutes of intentional solitude. Leave your devices in another room, go for a walk without headphones, or simply sit by a window. The goal is not to achieve a blank mind, but to become a calm observer of the mind you already have. What might you discover about your true priorities when the world's constant commentary is finally turned off? Complaining is a surrender of your power to act. It is a choice, often made unconsciously, to pour your finite energy into describing a problem rather than into solving it. Each grievance voiced is a small vote for your own helplessness, reinforcing the story that you are a victim of circumstances. The Stoic alternative is starkly simple and profoundly empowering. When faced with a difficulty, you have only two real options: accept the situation with quiet equanimity, or take decisive, constructive action to change it. Whining is not a third option. It is a trap that keeps you circling the problem, forever describing the walls of your prison instead of looking for the key. Epictetus, who knew more about harsh circumstances than most, laid this out with unflinching clarity. He taught that it is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about them. Complaining is the act of vocalizing and thereby amplifying those negative judgments. You are not upset because the weather is bad. You are upset because you have judged the bad weather as an injustice against your plans. Your complaint is not about the rain, it is about your own unmet expectation. A software engineer grew increasingly frustrated with his team's chaotic weekly meetings. They were disorganized, ran too long, and rarely produced clear action items. For months, his primary contribution was to complain about them afterward to his colleagues, a ritual that left everyone feeling more cynical and powerless. He decided to apply this Stoic principle. The next time he felt the urge to complain, he paused and asked himself, "Does this grievance help me accept the meeting or change it?" He chose change. He spent 30 minutes outside of work drafting a simple, one-page meeting agenda template with clear objectives, time allocations, and a section for decisions. He then privately shared it with his manager, not as a criticism, but as a proposed solution to help the team be more effective. His manager, relieved to have a constructive idea, immediately adopted it. The meetings transformed, and the engineer's sense of agency transformed with them. He had reclaimed the energy he was wasting on complaint and channeled it into an action that improved his entire work environment. His power was always there, waiting behind the habit of grievance. For the next 24 hours, I invite you to conduct a personal experiment, a complaint fast. Your task is not to never feel the urge, but to notice it. Each time you feel a complaint forming on your tongue or in your mind, pause. In that moment of awareness, you have a choice. You can either accept the situation peacefully, releasing your resistance to what is, or you can ask, what is one small, constructive action I could take right now? This fast is not about suppressing your voice, but about redirecting its power. What might you build with all the energy you normally spend describing what is wrong? You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This grounding reminder from Marcus Aurelius is the heart of Memento Mori, the Stoic practice of remembering your own death. Far from a morbid fixation, this is a tool for radical clarity. It is the ultimate lens for distinguishing what is essential from what is merely noise. When you hold the finitude of your own existence in mind, the petty grievances, the social anxieties, and the endless pursuit of trivialities begin to lose their grip. They are exposed as the distractions they are, unable to withstand the sobering light of your limited time. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to do everything as if it were the last thing you were doing. He was not suggesting a life of frantic, bucket list chaos, but one of profound presence and integrity, to speak with honesty because you may not get another chance. To act with justice because this could be your final act, to focus completely on the task before you because there may not be a tomorrow to finish it. This awareness injects a quiet urgency into the most ordinary moments, transforming them into conscious choices. Consider the story of a woman who received a sudden and serious health diagnosis. The prognosis was uncertain, and for the first time in her life, her own mortality was not an abstract concept but a pressing reality. In the weeks that followed, a strange calm settled over her. The things that used to consume her energy, office politics, the pressure to maintain a perfect home, the fear of what others thought, all of it faded into irrelevance. What remained was starkly clear: her love for her family, the value of a quiet moment with a friend, and the projects that truly ignited her passion. She realized she had been living a life designed by default, not by deliberate choice. Once she recovered, she did not return to her old patterns. She negotiated for a more flexible work arrangement to spend more time with her children. She started writing the novel she had always talked about. She let go of friendships that were based on obligation rather than genuine connection. The brush with mortality did not paralyze her with fear, it liberated her with purpose. It forced her to release everything that was not truly hers to carry. To bring this practice into your own life, try a simple but powerful exercise. Take a moment of quiet and ask yourself this question with absolute seriousness. What would I do differently today if I knew it was my last day? Would you waste the morning scrolling through social media? Would you hold onto that grudge? Would you postpone the kind word or the creative project? Do not just think about the answer. Write down 1 or 2 specific things. Then, for just this one day, live as if you had that knowledge. Let that awareness quietly guide your choices, your conversations, and your focus. Notice what you naturally let go of and what you are drawn to hold closer. This is not about preparing for an ending, but about fully claiming the life you have while you have it. Your journal is a silent, non-judgmental friend where you can unpack your mind and heart. This nightly conversation is not about creating a perfect record of your day, but about clearing the mental clutter that accumulates in the spaces between your thoughts. It is a deliberate act of sorting through the day's impressions, separating the useful lessons from the emotional residue you no longer need to carry. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius left us the ultimate example of this practice. His private writings, which we now call meditations, were never intended for publication. They were his personal journal, a raw and honest dialogue with himself where he processed his fears, reinforced his principles, and released his frustrations with the world around him. Through his own words, he was constantly letting go, reminding himself of what was truly within his control. He modeled journaling as a tool for inner hygiene, a way to wash away the judgments and anxieties that cloud our perception. To begin this practice, you can use 3 simple Stoic prompts each evening. First, ask yourself, what did I do well today? This is not about grand achievements, but about recognizing moments where you acted with patience, kindness, or integrity, reinforcing your virtuous choices. Second, ask, what could I improve? This is a gentle inquiry, free from self-criticism, focused solely on finding a single, actionable lesson for tomorrow. And third, the most powerful question for release, what am I clinging to that I need to let go? This could be a resentment from a conversation, anxiety about a future event, or disappointment in an outcome you cannot change. By naming it and writing it down, you transfer its weight from your mind to the page. You can make this even more accessible with a simple nightly ritual. Before you sleep, take just 5 minutes to write down one thing you are grateful for, one small lesson you learned, and one thing you choose to release. The act of physically writing the final item and then closing the journal is a symbolic gesture of setting that burden down for the night. You are not ignoring the problem, you are simply choosing not to carry it into your rest. This small, consistent practice builds a powerful habit of daily release. It creates a sacred space between one day and the next, ensuring you do not drag yesterday's mental clutter into tomorrow's fresh opportunities. What single thought or worry from today could you lay to rest on the page tonight, gifting yourself a clearer mind and a lighter heart for the morning? We often think freedom is doing what we want, but the Stoics found it in doing what we ought. This is a profound paradox that by releasing our tight grip on personal ambition and self-centered desires, we can discover a purpose far larger than our individual concerns. True liberation emerges not from escaping our responsibilities, but from embracing them with our full heart and integrity. The philosopher Epictetus, who began his life in bondage, understood this kind of freedom better than most. He taught that we must carefully perform our appointed role in life, whatever it may be, since our character is our true possession. he asked his students to remember that they are not merely isolated individuals, but also a citizen of the world, a neighbor, a son or a daughter, a parent or a worker. Each of these roles carries duties, and it is in the conscious, virtuous fulfillment of these duties that we find our deepest meaning. Your character is not defined by what you acquire for yourself, but by the quality of your service to the whole. Consider the story of a man who spent the first part of his career relentlessly chasing promotions and professional accolades. He believed that climbing the corporate ladder was the path to significance and freedom. Yet the higher he climbed, the more isolated and anxious he felt. His life was a constant calculation of personal gain. A shift occurred when his first child was born, and he found himself in the simple, demanding role of a father. Late nights at the office lost their appeal next to the responsibility of reading a bedtime story. He made a conscious choice to let go of his single-minded careerism and pour his energy into being a present, reliable parent and an active member of his local community. He started coaching his daughter's soccer team and volunteering at a neighborhood food bank. In doing so, he discovered a satisfaction he had never known in the boardroom. The freedom he found was not from his duties but within them. By focusing on what he owed to others, he transcended his small, worried self and became part of something enduring. His value was no longer a variable in a performance review, but a constant in the lives of the people he served. Look at one of your own core roles today, whether you are a friend, a colleague, a sibling, or a parent. How can you fulfill that role with more conscious virtue in the next 24 hours? Can you listen more patiently, offer help without being asked, or simply be fully present with someone who needs you? In that small, deliberate act of service, you may just touch the freedom the Stoics described. A quiet transformation awaits when we stop fighting the currents of life and begin to trust the flow. We have explored the landscape of letting go, from the foundational act of releasing what we cannot control to the profound practices of embracing our fate and remembering our finite time. These are not separate tools, but threads in a single, stronger fabric, a life lived with virtue and tranquility as its guide. The power of negative visualization teaches us to cherish the present by contemplating absence, while Memento Mori clarifies our priorities by reminding us of life's beautiful brevity. The ultimate goal was never to become unfeeling, but to become unshakable, to build an inner citadel so strong that external storms cannot breach its peace. This change does not announce itself with fanfare. It happens quietly behind the veil of your daily choices, in the moment you pause before reacting, in the gratitude you feel for a simple meal, in the burden you consciously lay down at the end of the day. The Roman philosopher Seneca captured this serene state perfectly when he wrote that the mind becomes unassailable when it has withdrawn into itself and found peace by aligning with nature and reason. This alignment is the source of the tranquility we seek. Your journey begins not with a grand overhaul, but with a single, deliberate step. This week, choose just one principle from our exploration. Perhaps you will practice the dichotomy of control with a specific worry, or you will perform one act of voluntary discomfort to rediscover your resilience. Maybe you will start a nightly journal to release the day's mental clutter. Whatever you choose, let it be a small, consistent practice. True change is built in these quiet moments of repetition. I would love to hear which concept resonated most deeply with you. Share your chosen practice in the comments below, and let us continue this shared journey of growth together, supporting one another in the pursuit of a lighter, more purposeful life. Your path to inner freedom starts with a single, released breath.